Okay, we're going to actually be starting our gathering music is a video, and it's a Ukrainian children's chorus that has been around for several years. They've been on America's Got Talent and singing a rather familiar and uplifting song.
Troubles come and my heart wouldn't be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit right with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be. There is no life without its hunger. Each restless heart beats going perfectly. But when you come and I am filled with wonder, sometimes I think I glimpse eternity. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulders. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Thank you, Beth. That was a great choice for an opening number. Good morning, friends. I want to extend a warm welcome to you today. Everyone is welcome here. You are welcome here regardless of your age, your race, or the gender with which you identify. You are welcome here regardless of your income, your education level, your religion, or your position in society. You are welcome here regardless of who you love or who you vote for. You are welcome here regardless of the regrets that burden you or the mistakes you have made. No matter what, you are welcome here. In this community, we support each other in the sacred task of becoming, celebrate the transcending mystery of life, and rely on the transforming power of love. We are here to help each other along the spiritual pathways that lead towards happiness, compassion, and life fully lived. We are here to minister to all peoples and to our planet. We are here to stand on the side of love in all things. Our theme for today is Courageous Women. It is also the first Sunday of the month, so this is also an intergenerational service. The kids will be with us all hour, and we have some activities for both adults and the young ones. For most of the history of our strand of civilization, women have been thought of as less than men. The result has been a great deal of wasted humanity. In spite of this, there have been many women who have shown outstanding courage. Today, we will take a look at a few of them. Immediately after the service, I will be joining the Zoomers for Circle Talk. Those that are here in person can join us at any time by pulling up a chair over by the TV set, which is right there. Okay, before we turn to our announcements, let's take a few moments and observe a time of silence for the millions of people of Ukraine who are suffering the cruelties of war, and for those all over the world who are suffering the cruelties of war and refugeeism. Please make yourself comfortable in your chairs, close your eyes and quiet your thoughts, and let us just begin with a breath. And amen. Okay, let's have the announcements then, and then we'll do the lighting of the chalice. And then opening hymn, yes. So are there any announcements that we should be made aware of?
Good morning. My name is Harvey. I'm just inviting you to stick around after the service and have some organic fair trade coffee or tea in the Fuller Fellowship Hall, brought to you by the Green Sanctuary team. The coffee, the idea of organic fair trade coffee, that is.
Thank you, Harvey. Others, Clark and Nancy. Actually, it would be best if you could come up. We can bring it back to you too. We are.
She's quite low.
Yeah.
It was in the buff announce, or just it was one of our announcements that Gladys Burks lost her sister-in-law and then the sister-in-law's daughter within 15 days of each other. Clark and I know Gladys from being on the Race Relations Council. She's a friend of Buff, and she's part of the backbone of this community. Her insights and her contributions are so wise and so kind and so insightful. And I know that she is really mourning. This is a huge loss. So I've got a card here made out to Gladys. I'll put it on the little table out there. And if you want to sign it, that's where it'll be.
Thank you, Nancy. That's very thoughtful.
Two quick things about this coming Wednesday's meeting of the Social Justice Committee. We're going to be talking about some topics that may have a wider interest in the congregation. One is the implications of the UU 8th principle for the work of the Social Justice Committee. And the second is based on conversations with the Michigan Unitarian Universalist Social Justice Network, some ideas for things we might do in relationship to the crisis in Ukraine. Joanne is going to post the Zoom link in the Buff Announce for Tuesday, and the meeting is at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Other announcements?
In the light of Women's History Month, Twin City Players, the next 3 weeks is doing a play called Silent Sky, which is a wonderful story about a woman who worked at the Harvard, one of the precursors to NASA in the late 1800s, and her story, as she was one of the human calculators there that helped get us into space.
Excellent. Thank you. Beth, others? If there are no other announcements, let's move on then to our opening hymn.
So we're going to sing all 4 verses of this. It will be up on the screen. If you're willing and able, please stand.
every woman of every nation, young and old, each generation. Every man's out in the name of love, there would be no more war. Every man in the world had his mind set on freedom. If every man stood with brother as a witness for peace, if every man of every nation, young and old, each generation, holding hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. Every leader in the world shared a vision of freedom. If every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked for justice and liberation, holding hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every nation in the world set a true course for freedom, if every nation raised its children in a culture of peace, if all our sons and all our daughters reached for friendship across the waters, refusing to be enemies, there would be no more war.
Thank you. We're very lucky to have so many talented musicians in our congregation. And Candace is, of course, the core, and Beth is our music director, and she is the one who's been choosing these hymns. And of course, thank you to Nancy and our Nan and Harvey for leading the hymns. Very, very nice. Now, Harvey, if you would come forward and light the chalice for us. We are the fire. May we burn so bright and so hot that the structures of oppression and evil are turned to ash. And now on your screen, the words for our affirmation will appear, and we'll read them in unison. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Okay, thank you. And now for joys and sorrows, I see that, and we usually go with the kids first. I see that Jean and Rosie are here. Jean or Rosie, do you have any joys or concerns you'd like to share with us today? Jean, you got to come up and speak in the mic, or someone's got to take the mic back to you.
It's up to you. Thanks for sharing.
Our first spring flowers have appeared. Yeah, snowdrops. And our daffodils
Okay.
are coming up.
Thank you, Jean.
Thanks
That's
for
that's good
sharing.
news. I saw a couple robins today too. Rosie, you have anything to share? Anything that's either making you happy or sad? Rosie, you should face the congregation if you share. What do you share?
I'm so glad that bees came to pollinate our flowers.
That's very good. Yes. My wife is a big fan of bees. Yes. Okay. I don't
Bees.
think we just reached a critical mass of cuteness here. So thank you, Rosie. Yes, Candace.
This has to do with, I'm presenting grandma bragging rights. So my granddaughter, who's a junior this year, is on competitive cheer at Papa. And I went to, first they won regionals a week ago, and then I went to their state competition yesterday, and they lost first place by 1 point out of 780 points.
Oh my goodness.
But today's subject is being courageous, women of courage. And I kept thinking about this in terms of my granddaughter doing cheer. I mean, they are definitely courageous when they're like throwing these other girls up in the air and catching them and doing all this gymnastic stuff. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, yes, it is. I've seen some of those competitions. Thank you, Candace. Others? Are there others?
For
We-
the- Sorry, folks at home that didn't hear on the mic, but Nancy's just saying we had a great turnout at the soup kitchen in Benton Harbor yesterday.
Yeah, thank you. And that's we did, and we had a great time doing it too. It was our first time doing it on a odd number, the first Saturday on an odd numbered month. And it was our first time to go, as far as I know, to go vegetarian with our meal. So it was quite a lovely affair. It was a lot of time to work hard, but also a lot of time to stand around and chat, which I have noticed that many you use Excel at. So, so at any rate, yeah, it went very well, and I understand that the folks really liked what they got too. So that's the word. So pizza is still the favorite. We've been serving on the even months. We've been serving pepperoni and sausage pizzas, and that's by far the favorite dish there. And I think our vegetarian pizzas will soon hold a status similar to that. Okay. Susie.
Hi. So I shared this with the folks on Zoom earlier, but Glenn and I are working on a Habitat for Humanity bill down here in Florida. And one of the things they do every morning, we all gather and they have a devotional. And of course, the devotional is usually where someone reads from the Bible or, you know, something like that. So we signed up to do the devotional, and Glenn did a really nice reading of the golden rule. Said like 8 different religions, and how that same idea resonates through all the different religions, all the different cultures, and a couple of people really seemed receptive to it, you know. So we just introduced a little bit of UU into our Habitat community here, and I was very proud of Glenn for volunteering to do it, and he did a great job.
Thank you, Susie. And we're very proud of you too, Glenn. Others from anywhere, from Zoom, from the congregation? If not, I'll just say a few words about the Ukraine situation. It's very bad. It's very bad to see this kind of stuff, but I think consciousness is changing. I mean, some of my friends feel very pessimistic about this, but I say, well, you know, the thing is, we are seeing, you know, the whole world condemn this, which is something, well, not the whole world. No? Not enough. Okay. One thing, another thing, one thing I'm happy to tell my friends, because I do think we are evolving to be, to at least to be more conscious of the darkness in our own natures. You can't anymore attend a crucifixion you can't, we don't flog people. Pretty much we don't lynch people. And Steven Pinker says in his book that whose title I cannot remember, that we are per capita killing less people by violence, or less people are dying by violence than in previous centuries. Even, but at any rate, there is some hope I see, and I hope the Ukrainian people, I hope we are able to navigate through that and help them in some way that allows them to return to themselves and as a free nation. Does anyone have any comment on that before we go on? If they'd like to, anything? Yeah, Nan.
Got to put in a word for renewables. We need to get away from fossil fuels. Russia has too much power because it has a lot of oil and gas, and kudos to Germany for shutting off that pipeline.
Amen. Yes. Now we need to shut off stuff we're getting. So right now, we're going to move to our offering. And Harvey, if you would pass the place out. The offering words will appear. They are already there. We'll read them in unison, and then we will have our special offering music. So let us in unison read. This fellowship is a community of ourselves. Its resources are our resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it. Okay.
We have a video for our offering music, and I picked it because it was intergenerational. This is Kid President, who some of you have seen before, rapping about some awesome girls in women's history.
Alright, I got something for y'all today. This one goes out to all the awesome girls out there. And there's a long history of awesome girls. Here we go. I'm talking Susan B., Anthony, Gwendolyn Brooks, Poetry, Anne Frank, Frida Kahlo, Ruby Bridges, Jackie O, Juliet, Gordon Lowe, Harriet, Peaches Stowe, Sally Ride went to space, Mary Bowser was a free slave, Maya Lynn, Tina Fey, Mother Teresa, Dorothy Day, Rachel Carson, Julia Child, Serena Williams, Douglas Wild, Nellie Bly, Jane Goodall, Rosa Parks, stood for all, Helen Keller, Marla too, and to watch Maya Angelou, Eleanor Roosevelt leading in the White House, Beverly Cleary, riding Ralph S. Mount, Sandra Day O'Connor, referred to as Your Honor, Lady Bird Johnson, to Ruth Muscat Bronson, Rosalind Franklin, Harriet Tubman, Elizabeth Shirley Flynn, Claremont Stacey Allison, Amelia Earhart, fly around the world, top 10 awesome girls, I'm top 10 awesome girls. Ooh, yeah, alright. These are some girls in the past that have made history. Now here's some girls who are making history right now. But first, I gotta take a drink. Emma's is an awesome girl, always on a mission. Maddie is a rock star who also likes to listen. JoJo and Kayla, making good things happen. Josie is a funny girl, getting people laughing. Hannah changes everything, that's just who she is. Mia likes to spread the love, she's an awesome kid. Mama's making movies and she's gonna make a dent. Angel's in Uganda and she wants to be president. Linda's Erin Erickson and Lucy too. Brittany Brown, Rising Stone, Riley has some books for you. Olivia and Haley, spreading hope and helping out. Celeste Kid, Governor, doing good without a doubt. Brennan is a brave mom, Haley got them pancakes on. Gotta give Viv a hand, helping people make a stand. Too many awesome girls, more than people think. I'm running out of air and I gotta get a drink. Ooh, I'm so thirsty. Oh, I forgot one, my sister. Oh. I've been naming lots of awesome girls. She'll understand. Too many awesome girls to name. Okay, Pete, out.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you, Beth. Beth, did you choose that? Pick that? Yes. Yeah, very cool. Okay, and now we're going to have our intergenerational activity, and we're going to begin with a story. Yeah. So could we get a Rosie and Jean, if you want to join up here, and Lois, yes. And this is a very good story. Joanne gave me a preview of it yesterday, so.
So this story is about the true story of how women joined the fire department of New York City. So women were not always allowed to be firefighters. Brenda Berkman was a New York City firefighter. Whenever her officer sent her, Brenda went. She hauled hoses, she climbed ladders, she even broke through walls. Fighting fires was exciting and gritty, loud and dirty, and sometimes dark and dangerous. Brenda helped save lives, and it was the only job she worked to do. For a long time, however, Brenda didn't only fight fires, she fought discrimination. Here's Brenda fighting fires for New York City. We're going to find out how she was able to become a firefighter. So when Brenda was growing up in the 1950s, she loved playing sports and being outside. But back then, girls weren't allowed to do everything they wanted to do. Brenda wanted to play baseball. The coach said, "Don't send a girl to play a boys' game." Brenda did not like being told she couldn't play sports because she was a girl. What did being a girl have to do with anything? So Brenda and her friends played their own games. All girls football, Brenda said. "We're getting down and dirty." All right. As Brenda got older, people's ideas about what boys and girls were allowed to do began to change. Still, some people had a hard time accepting women in jobs men usually did. Brenda didn't let that stop her. She moved to New York City to attend law school. She hoped to help people. Brenda liked the idea of being a lawyer, but it turned out to be a lot of sitting still and doing the same thing day after day. She missed being active and outdoors. So what do you think she did after that? Think she still wanted to join the fire department? Yeah, I think so too. All right. Then the New York City Fire Department made a big announcement. It would finally allow women to take the exam to become firefighters. Brenda had never thought she'd be allowed to do that. In the past, every firefighter in the city had to be a man. In fact, they'd only ever been called firemen. What do we call them now? Yes, because they can be women too. That's right. But back then, all we ever said was firemen because they were only men. Brenda knew firefighting was the job for her. Firefighters were the first to be called and never knew what to expect. They had to be strong enough to break down doors and smart enough to stay in safe. And most of all, they wanted to help people. Brenda wanted a job exactly like that. Firefighting seemed perfect. She wanted, very dirty and scary, but she was brave, right? She wanted to do the hard things. But not everyone thought women should become firefighters. They said, "Don't send a girl to do a man's job." They didn't think women were courageous enough, smart enough, or strong enough. So here they all arguing on the train, on the subway.
Yeah.
Yep. How do you think Brenda felt when they were saying that stuff? Yeah, she was brave. But she probably didn't like hearing that. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Brenda knew she was courageous, smart, and strong. She took the written test and passed it. Now it was time to train for the fitness test. And there she is out there running and training for the test.
Yeah, training.
She ran for miles and worked every muscle. Brenda knew that she was ready. But the fitness test wasn't what Brenda expected. A firefighter has to be able to carry her own equipment. She has to be able to break through walls. She has to quickly solve problems in order to help people. But this exam didn't test true firefighting abilities. Every single woman failed. They could, she was strong enough, but they designed the test so women couldn't pass. As an example, I was sharing with Reverend Jim that my father wanted to be a firefighter, but they made the height requirement really high, probably so women couldn't join. And he was just below the height requirement, so he didn't get to be a firefighter.
No.
So sometimes they make rules or rules that intentionally keep certain people out. All right. Oh, he could be a fireman. That's awesome. Yeah, I think he's pretty tall. Yep. He is a fireman? You a volunteer fireman? No. Okay. All right. So let's see what Brenda did next. So she failed the test. They said she couldn't join. Brenda believed there were women who were capable of passing the test and becoming trained firefighters. It was clear the fire department wanted to keep women out. Brenda knew she had to stand up for herself and the other women. And it just so happened that she had studied law. So what can lawyers do when they find out that there's a law that's not fair? Yeah, they can sue. So do you think she did that? She did. Brenda sued the fire department and she won. They had to create a new test that was a good measurement of the ability to be trained as a firefighter. But some people still didn't want Brenda to succeed. Do you think that it stopped her? Do you think that stopped her? No. When she returned to take the new test, the fire department only had men's gear. Everything was too big and got in the way of doing the required tasks. But that didn't stop her. Look at her in her uniform being brave. She ran and proved she was fast. She climbed ladders and proved her endurance. She used a sledgehammer and proved that she was strong. She dragged a dummy low on the ground and proved she could think quickly and rescue people. Brenda always knew she could do it. Now everyone else did too. Brenda. Yeah, well, you find out later they didn't have suits that fit women, so she had to do it in a man's suit. Brenda and 40 other women passed that test and became the first professional female fighters in New York City. Yes, they did. But up ahead was a more difficult test, one that tried her inner strength. So let's see what happened. All right, so she's at the fire station here. Many people still didn't want women in the fire service. They yelled at Brenda and the other women outside their firehouses. They said, "I want to be saved by firemen." So they were still protesting, even though she was now a firefighter. Some of the other firefighters were cruel. They pulled a lot of pranks, but those pranks were not funny tricks. They were mean and dangerous, and sometimes threatened the women's lives. So they were not being nice to her. Fighting fires was hard work, but dealing with this treatment was much harder. Firefighters need to depend on one another. Brenda wasn't sure if she could depend on her fellow firefighters. Sometimes it was lonely. Often she felt invisible. Here's all the guys are joking around and she's kind of to the side. She feels left out. Brenda wasn't the only woman treated badly, and many were afraid if they spoke up, it would only get worse or they'd lose their jobs. But Brenda understood the lows and assured them they could stand together. She started a group called United Women Firefighters, so the women would have a place to talk about what was happening. Despite the way that she was sometimes treated, Brenda kept doing the job she loved. She had good friends who helped her through difficult times. Slowly, things got better. You can see her group of female firefighters. So, as the years went by, every time she helped someone, she was reminded how important being a firefighter is, not only to her, but for the whole city. So here she was, saving people from fires. Yep. She is. Brenda did her job so well, she eventually became captain. She was a fire captain. She became one of the bosses. Wherever Brenda sent her company, that's what they call the firefighting crew. Wherever Brenda sent her company, they went. She hauled hoses, climbed ladders, broke through walls. Fighting fires was exciting and gritty, loud and dirty, and sometimes dark and dangerous. But Brenda proved that women can be firefighters even in a big city like New York. She fought discrimination so girls today can do more than dream about being a firefighter. They can actually become one. So here she's a bit older. She's now in charge. And so I won't read this whole last part here, but it's kind of like tells you what happened in the end. So I believe she wound up fighting in 9/11. See, where did I get? Oh, here's more about Brenda. So I think she wound up fighting. Do you remember when there was a lot of the Twin Towers came down in New York City? Yes, I believe she was one of the firefighters then, but I don't want to read through the whole thing. So anyway, is that a pretty cool story? Yeah. Did you ever want to be, either of you want to be a firefighter? I do. Well, now you can. That's really cool. You want to do what? Oh, what a space. That's really cool too. All right. Well, thanks for listening to the story. You guys want to come here because we're going to be doing some drawing. Yeah, Lois, you want to sit next to her?
Yeah, thank you, Joanne, our interim DRE. Okay, so that begins our intergenerational activity. Now, let me just read a little bit here so I get everything in. The first Sunday of every month is an intergenerational Sunday. Today, we're going to join the kids in an activity that will help us think about the important contributions of women. Everyone here, whether they are young or old, is invited to, if they wish, take a coloring page depicting a courageous woman and some color crayons or colored pencils and go to work. While you are coloring, you may think of a courageous woman who affected your life. If you do think of a special woman, you can come forward after Candace and I speak about women that have been important in our lives and share with the whole group. Anyone, young or old, can come forward. While you are getting your art supplies, Beth will play a video by Juliet Rouse titled Standing on the Shoulders. And dear Zoomers, we want you to hear from you too. If you think of a courageous woman who has really impacted your life, raise your hand and you will have the floor. We're going to open the floor to everybody after we do some coloring. And please, everyone, keep your comments to a few sentences so that everyone who wishes gets a chance to speak. You'll notice that you have binders in front of you. That's to provide a smooth surface. I see Harvey's already coloring. Got a little starting things. We just randomly put actually Joanne just randomly put the pictures around, but you can trade. If you got, say, I'll trade 2 Malalas for an Eleanor Roosevelt or something like that. If you want to do that, please feel free to do it. Okay, grab your coloring supplies, and we have plenty up here in the front. We also have chairs up front if you want to work on a surface. So go ahead and grab your color crayons, and Beth will play some music, then Candace will speak, and then we'll open the floor to everyone. So Beth, go ahead.
I am standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I am stronger for their courage. I am wiser for their words. I am lifted by their longing for a fair and brighter future. I am grateful for their vision, for their toiling on this earth. We are standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before us. They are saints and they are humans. They are angels, they are friends. We can see beyond the struggles and the troubles and the challenge when we know that by our efforts things will be better in the end. They lift me higher than I could ever fly, carrying my burdens away. I imagine our world if they hadn't tried. Standing on the shoulders of the ones who came before me. I am honored by their passion for our liberty. I will stand a little taller, I will work a little longer, and my shoulders will be there to hold the ones who follow me. They lift me to hold the ones who follow me. My shoulders will be there to hold the ones who follow me.
Thank you. Candace, would you come forward and tell us a little bit about your a woman who affected you, encouraged you? You sure can, yes.
So Bev, one of these pictures, would it work if I held the picture up close to the camera? So it was not a difficult choice for me to come up with my woman of courage. It's my mother. And in thinking about her life, she displayed courage and grit and tenacity. And I looked up some other synonyms. She was adventurous. She was resolute. She was daring. She was high-spirited for sure. So these are just some of the adjectives that I think of when I think of my mom. And I have some pictures here of her, so I'm going to take a minute and hold them up close to the camera so the Zoomers can see the pictures. So the first one is when she got married, and it was during World War II, 1944. It says right on the picture with my dad. They got married in St. Louis. This was one of those pictures they take at your church when they do like the directory of a church. I like this one because it looks a lot like me. And this one is a Mother's Day picture. And it's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of women. And finally, this is her last picture. This was taken about a month before she passed. And the quilt in the background is a quilt she made with her mother. She had just turned 92 in that picture. Anyway, so just some brief thoughts. She grew up as a cotton picker. She was in a poor white family with 12 siblings in the South. They picked cotton by the hours. Then it went on to like picking different vegetables like watermelon and pickles and whatever. So I'm sure she endured a lot of grief, a lot of pain, physical pain. She told many, many, many stories of growing up in an abusive household where she was whipped and beaten and not taken to the doctor when she really needed it. So she definitely learned a lot of tenacity through that. Then she headed out, got out of the house and headed out and met my dad when he was in training during World War II. And then they got married. So she was very, I would consider brave, very tenacious, very independent, doing all of that. But she was pretty much on her own. Then the next thing I thought of was when my dad passed away in 1979, I figured it out the other day. She was around 60 years old. He passed away, and she just said to herself, I'm going to Florida. She just sold everything, packed up what was left, and headed out. So she did that all on her own. She lived on her own for several years, and which took a lot of grit, I think, to do that and be brave to do that. And she had a second husband. So both of her husbands died in her arms. She nursed them to their death, which was pretty courageous and pretty brave. And then finally, she developed dementia. And that was at the point where I was able, fortunately, to convince her to sell everything and move back up to Michigan and live with me. So I've thought about that a lot. I remember the day we pulled away from her house, and I actually have a picture of it, of her sitting in the back seat of my car, just forlornly looking out at her home that she had lived on her own, been on her own, and here she was having to make that choice. So she still had enough mental capacity to realize what was going on. And that had to have been very, very brave on her part to make that decision to leave it all and move in with her daughter and basically lose her independence. So.
Thank you, Candace. I trust everyone is coloring away who wants to color, and everyone's thinking about a woman they'd like to share something of. I wasn't going to talk about my mom, but Candace kind of inspired me. My mom, I was kind of afraid of my mom. She also grew up poor and also grew up in an abusive house and with a philandering dad, and it was pretty tough for her. But I remember one time that really struck to me. We lived on a farm, and I and my brothers, I was like 5, maybe 6. I wasn't very old. And I've told the story before, but a couple of dogs from a neighboring farm came in, and our big collie came around the corner and just tore into those dogs in a fearsome fight right in the midst of where I and my brothers were playing. And my mom was frying potatoes in the kitchen. She came out, she didn't even bother to dump the potatoes out of the pan, and she started slashing away at those dogs. Scared the crap out of me. My mom has passed away, of course. So, okay. So anyway, my courageous woman is Mary Oliver in her poem Wild Geese. And incidentally, I would say that Harvey introduced me to this poem long ago. I did not realize when I first started with the Unitarian Universalist thing that Mary Oliver was the poet laureate of Unitarian Universalism. Not officially, maybe, but maybe in terms of function. In her poem Wild Geese, Mary tells us that our salvation, our capacity to be fully human and fully alive, is in us, in our natures, in our friends to whom we confess, and in the earth and all its creatures. All that is needed is to give heed to what the earth, with its prairies, its deep trees, its mountains and rivers, are telling us. Watch the wild geese as they cut through the clean blue air. Look deeply and you will find yourself. And now Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. I like that first line. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscape, over the prairies and the deep trees. the mountains, and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clear blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. So with that, has anyone thought of a woman, a courageous woman they'd like to share? Joanne has. Oh. Looks like you've been volunteered, Terry.
Yes, he has. I think his mother, I never met Terry's mother, but when he tells me her story, it's very, very courageous. So I want him to share what his mom did.
My mom was a very quiet person. And, when I was probably 13 years old, my dad just disappeared. And my mom ended up raising 5 kids on her own. And she went back to work. She didn't have her driver's license. She got her driver's license and went back to work full time.
That was very brave.
Thank you, Terry. Are there others who would like to share? Are any Zoomers who would like have something they'd like to share about a woman who's made a difference in their lives? Jeff is coming forward. There are some Zoomers? Okay.
I am so lucky to be married to a courageous woman, my wife. And she tells this story when she first started teaching. So this is back in Illinois. And she's a coach. So, and so there's women coaches and men coaches, and there's salaries. And the salary differences are disparaging. The women coaches are only getting about 60% of what the men coaches are getting. And they asked to have this difference, made up, and they wouldn't do it. So my wife and her colleagues, they take their school to court, and they go in. They had a lawyer that hated the principal of the school, and even at they won. They go in, they win, and the lawyer goes, and I can sue him for this, and I can sue him for that, and no, we've got what we want, and they quit, which I think was very wise on the women and my wife's part. And she went on to become the teachers union leader later on. So I have a very courageous wife and a very strong woman that I'm very proud of. Thanks.
Thank you. Would you like us to report that back to your wife for you? Pretty sure yeah, pretty sure she'd like to hear that. Tom, and then we'll go to the Zoomers.
Well, I saw this picture of Angela Merkel. It reminded me of first of all, my great-grandmother, who was born in Germany, married my great-grandfather in Cincinnati right after the Civil War. She raised 13 kids in a log cabin in Upper Minnesota. We always tell the story to our grandchildren how my great-grandfather got eaten by a bear, which is roughly a true story. And she continued to raise the 13 kids in a log cabin, dirt floor. My grandmother, Amelia Goodrow, was another courageous woman who raised kids, 7 kids through the Depression, and my mother and me.
Thank you, Tom. And now, and any more who from the floor can speak later, but now we'll move to Zoom. And Are there anybody on Zoom who'd like to address the congregation?
Hi, this is Lisa, Lisa Fuller. I'll start and then next will be Lisa Quinlan. So I have a few women to acknowledge. I'm inspired by Reverend Jim and Candace to share my mother. She was one of 7 children. She was raised on a farm and she had me as a teenager. And I know that statistically, the children of unwed teenage moms tend to not do as well in life, or often do not do as well in life as the children of married couples or older women. And so I am grateful to her for giving me a fabulous beginning and remaining supportive of me through my adulthood. Jim Fuller mentioned that Margaret Mead was a 20th century anthropologist and writer, and she spoke at Buff. We don't remember when exactly that was, but Margaret Mead is famous for saying, never doubt that a small group of citizens can change the world, because indeed that's the only thing that ever has. So I think that's pretty cool Buff history to have someone who is as widely recognized as Margaret Mead as part of our legacy. Lisa Quinlan.
Hi, this is Lisa. Oh, I wanted to name an activist that I knew. Her name was Lynn McAfee, and she worked on size acceptance issues and, for larger people. She was part of NAFA, and then she formed the Council on Size and Weight Discrimination. I knew her and wrote her for years and years, and she was an influence on me for many years. I'm going to put up a link that talks about her on the chat too. So that's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Lisa, and Lisa, for sharing those inspirational women. Are there others who would like to share? Beth.
This is another anthropologist. My when I was a grad student in anthropology, my advisor was a woman, and she was the only tenured woman on that faculty. And she just had spent most of her career fighting against sexism in the anthropological field, which, like a lot of the other sciences, really struggled with that and still does to this day. And she's still a renowned, world-renowned archaeologist. And she sort of introduced me to a whole nother life. She never married, she never had kids of her own choosing, and really made anthropology and archaeology her life. So I chose a different path, but I still find inspiration in her life.
Thank you. Others? Julie. Ralph, we'll get to you in a second.
My mother had kind of a different story. She was born into white privilege. Her grandfather and his brother were the Siemens of Fairbury, Illinois, a very tiny town. She almost died when she was 5 from mastoiditis, and as a result, she was spoiled rotten. She had a pony and so on and so forth. After her grandfather died, his brother, things, took over the money. But anyway, because of that, she was a college graduate. My mother was a result of white privilege, and then my parents divorced. We didn't have a car from the time I was 5 till I was 18, but she managed to get me a college scholarship. She was an author, a reporter. She was on TV once. What's My Line? She was an antiques dealer. She could do anything. And I think part of it was because she was spoiled.
Thank you, Julie. And Ralph.
Yes, I'll do a whistle stop tour of my inspirations. starting with my mother, who would sit down with me with, of all things, Jacques Cousteau books, if you remember how big he was in the 70s, and she would quiz me on the vocabulary, and that was certainly instrumental in my development, fitting because she taught my dad English from, as she told me, Scrooge McDuck comic books. I kid you not. Because she had been to business college in Germany, and so she learned English as part of her secretarial training. So there was her. There was also Bob and Carol Ball of Hillsdale, who were friends of ours, who were part of the group, the Hillsdale County Coalition for Peace and Justice, who made a name for themselves in a largely, to put it mildly, right sort of oriented town. They would be out there on the corner, come rain or come shine, picketing mostly for peace causes, but whatever else came up at that particular time. And they got a lot of stick for that in town. And I got a lot of stick for it by association, by hanging out with them. And of course, when this question used to come up, why are you hanging out with them? I would say, because they are my friends, and regardless of whether I agree with everything they say or do, and I do, but even if I didn't, I'm not about to let anybody tell me who I can and can't hang out with in my spare time, quote unquote. So both of them have since passed, and I think the world is definitely a poorer place for their absence, because I was always impressed with their forthrightness and their commitment. It was awesome. And honestly, I haven't seen many other examples like that. Wish there were more. So I have to mention them. And of course, last but not least, my wife right here, who sits right here beside me and has been probably my number one inspiration presently for almost 30 years now. Time flies and we're having fun, right? But I mean, she has dealt with things and she has faced things that would have stopped other people in their tracks. And that's why I say Baby Bird is my hero, and the number one person I think about every day, and the number one person I fight for every day. And I can't imagine my life without her.
Thank you, Ralph. That's very touching. Also really good. So are there others who would like to speak before we, Dorothy?
Well, I just couldn't resist talking about Dolly Parton. I happened to see her on TV this morning. But the fact that she came from very humble beginnings, her father couldn't read. And so she was instrumental in doing everything she could. And she has made sure that millions of children under 5 have gotten books. And her latest project, she has joined with James Patterson, and they've written a book, and it deals with the trials and tribulations of people who are working in the entertainment field. And just a couple of years ago, we heard about her work because she knew a medical person, and she helped with her money to work with people so that we could develop a COVID treatment. And I think that this woman has done a lot for this country.
Thank you, Dorothy. And Hunter?
Just thank everyone for sharing that, because as each person was talking, I was thinking of so many women I've known who are courageous. But the one I want to just briefly celebrate right now in this church was a Unitarian, fellow Unitarian. Her name was Lonnie Myers, MD. We bought our retreat center from her. Lonnie became my friend in Unitarian. She was a member of my congregation in Chicago in the 1960s and 70s, where she was active in the anti-war movement against Vietnam. She helped to found various pro right to life groups, like the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws. She was courageous in challenging the sexual mores of the time. She was married and had 5 children. Lonnie was physically brave. I could give so many stories about Lonnie Myers, how she inspired me to be more courageous. But this closed by saying when she was 70 years old, retired from her practice as an anesthesiologist, she went to Africa in the Peace Corps and worked in Malawi as a physician for 2 years. She came back. She lived alone in a cabin without water or indoor plumbing or electric lights, which is there on our property now. She celebrated her 80th birthday by bungee jumping off a bridge in New Zealand, sending a picture to everyone of herself in a perfect swan dive with the rope behind her. And the real test of courage for Lonnie was at the end. She developed Alzheimer's disease, and she had always been a proponent of the freedom to die. She's an active proponent of the freedom to die. And at a certain point in the state of Washington, she managed to say goodbye to this world. She was a very, very brave woman and a Unitarian Universalist.
Thank you for sharing, Hunter. Are there others, either on Joanne?
My story will be quick, but I did want to say before I share that if you don't want to take your colored picture home, you can leave it on your seat, and we're going to be decorating with them because this is Women, History Month. So my story is back when I was in 3rd grade, 8 years old. It's one of the few stories that stands out from then. And I did not know at the time how significant it was, but my teacher was Ms. Bradley, the only teacher in the whole school that actually was a Ms. And I did not understand it. My mom was trying to explain it to me. So first of all, that was very brave at that time that she was Ms. Bradley, never shared if she was married or not, but she did share a story with us that as a child, I did not understand the significance, but she was all dressed up at a train station to go somewhere. And back then in Chicago, there was a lot of informal segregation. And she said there was a black toddler that had a binky pacifier, and the mom had fallen asleep on the train station, and the baby started choking, and nobody else would help the baby because the toddler was black. And she said she went over there, and she said somehow the pacifier had gotten stuck down, and so she had to go way in to pull this pacifier out. And then the baby vomited all over her in her really nice clothes for where she was going. But again, at the time, I really didn't understand racism in America and didn't understand. But now, when I'm older, I can really appreciate Ms. Bradley was, at the forefront of changes in America.
Thank you, Joanne. Would anyone else like to speak from Zoom or from the congregation? Oh, okay, Brett.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick. I've been thinking the whole time how to make this into a short story, but I want to tell you about the woman who's probably had the greatest influence on my life. Name is Ursula Schramm. She's long since been deceased. She was born in the early 1920s in Poland, rural Jewish family, lived on a farm probably until the mid 1930s. Her family had to move into the city for her father to work. Anyway, during that time, I believe it was either 1940, 1941, she ended up in a camp, labor camp. She was very able-bodied. You have to meet this woman. She could have handled anybody, even up into her old age. So she was put to work in a camp. Was worried she would not survive. Well, the thing that helped her and a lot of people in the camp survive is one of the officers' horses died. She and some other women were charged with burying it. Of course, the horse was not kosher, but they took advantage of burying this horse very shallow. It was late fall. So some of the group had meat, some of the group would not eat the horse because it was not kosher, but it did keep some of the people in the camp alive. She was able to get out of the camp, ended up in France, then ended up working for an advertising firm. She came to the US, ended up working for an advertising firm in Chicago. She had a husband, 3 children, husband left her. So anyway, decided she did not want to live in the city anymore, moved to about 20 acres in rural Wisconsin. There was nothing there but a well house and a barn. She built her own home with scraps she got from other people, from the local dump, from wherever, and built this home for her and her children. Of course, the children, as soon as they were 18, were back in Chicago. So I was kind of her adopted son after a while. From the time I was 14, probably till I was 19, I spent a lot of time with Mrs. Schramm. She was probably the first person who ever taught me how to think clearly. She was the first person who I ever heard talk about gay people as if they were just people. Which was at 14 for me, where I was coming from, that was big. She taught me how to think freely. She was Jewish, but yet she studied world religions, and that kind of piqued my interest in world religions. She taught me, she wanted to teach me all the things her daughters never wanted to learn. So I learned how to spin. I learned how to weave. She had sheep. She had goats. She taught me how to make cheese. Of course, she taught me how to butcher and cut meat. She taught me how to garden. She taught me how to preserve food. A lot of those things I had learned already from my Finnish aunts, but some of the things were new. But anyway, she was probably the first person who got me to think outside of my box of conservative craziness. That's all.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you. That's a lovely story. June.
Yes, this is June. I just couldn't let this day go by without bringing up Gloria Weberg, because she's one of the people that I most admire. And she's such a critical key component of not only our Buff Fellowship, but of the whole community. And she's just celebrated her 100th birthday this week. And so we need to celebrate Gloria in this day of celebrating women of courage.
Amen. Thank you, June. Anybody else? If not, thank you all for sharing. I'd ask you to please sign your pictures so that we can, when we hang them up, people recognize who's who in terms of artistic inspiration. And we'll now proceed to our final hymn. One, two, four. Let's put it down the screen.
Go free, where the oil of gladness songs all mountains. Oh, we'll build a shall roll down like waters and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Fill the land, mantles of praises, sound from the spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her peoples. Oh, fulfill the land, my people we sing. Oh, fill the land where sisters and brothers, anointed by God, and create peace where justice shall roll down like waters, peace like an ever-flowing stream.
And thank you, my friend, for coming today. Harvey, if you would unlight the chalice or extinguish the chalice, that would be great. And even though the fire is extinguished, it still burns within us. And now our benedictory music, which is going to be on the screen. Go in peace, friends.